I make anime, manga, and webtoon stories for a living. Ask me anything. So guys, today I thought I would do a Q&A. I haven't done this for a while. When I was growing up, I had this big thing of like wanting to ask all my favorite Japanese mangaka how they got their start and how they managed to make a living creating Naruto, creating Dragon Ball, creating whatever, and how I could do it too. Obviously, I'm not the creator of Naruto, right? But I am doing this for a living, and I thought it would be great to give back and answer questions without violating any NDAs that I have, that you guys are submitting directly to me. If you guys don't know who I am, I'm Brandon Chan. I'm a writer-producer for the webtoon manga anime space. I make original stories with my studio, Inspire Productions, and the successful ones we try to scale to animation. And you know, I have a lot of huge IP that we're working with in 2026, so I'm really excited to share a lot more projects that we're gonna be doing with you guys. But yeah, for now, a lot of the stuff I'm doing is original. But before then, smash the like button for the YouTube algorithm, really helps us out. It's a free way to support the channel. And subscribe if you're interested in learning more about the educational side of anime, manga, webtoon production, or just if you're a fan. Question on Twitter from Ezor. If you don't mind the answer, I want to ask why you chose to write manga and webtoon for a living. Great question. I think this is more of a personal question. For me, you know, I grew up on manga and anime. I was in kindergarten creating my own Shonen Jump hand-drawn comics, and I would try to sell those comics / manga to kids on the playground. That's how young I was doing this, right? Pretty much kindergarten, as soon as I could start writing, right? My journey then went to writing fan fictions for my favorite anime, while also doing my own original terrible stuff. I would then, you know, go on to write my first novel when I was 14. It's called Age of Darkness. It's published. You can read it right now. You can go and purchase it. That journey from being a kindergartner to reading, you know, Dragon Ball and seeing my first pair of boobs in Dragon Ball when I was like 7, to watching Toonami, being inspired and wanting to create my own stories. Now I'm 28, right? So when you think about it, let's say 90% of my life has been dedicated to creating stories in this medium. Professional or not, 90% of my life. It's something that when you find something so young that it's sort of like formed your brain in a certain way, when you're chasing something for so long, and when you're so passionate about it. Now, I still read manga and anime, but of course I love all sorts of things. I like video games, I like live action, I like all this other stuff, right? Books, all that things. And I hope to do all of it, right? But at its core, like everything that I've done since I was a kid has led up to what I'm doing now. And so why do I do it for a living, right? Like, there's way more lucrative jobs. Yeah, I can go work in, you know, you can go work at Meta and do AI stuff and make a ton of money. Dude, honestly, this is really fulfilling to my soul. It's something that I would do in my free time. Every day does not feel like work to me because I love what I do, and I love working with the people that I work with, and I love making stories, and I love connecting with readers. And I get to travel all over the world and just do whatever I want and just do the stories that I want to do. And for me, I think it's like a dream come true. So why do I do it for a living? It's a dream come true, and I get to make a living doing it. So it's kind of a no-brainer for me, at least. And it's what I've been chasing for my entire life. How do you keep in touch and grow your audience? What's your strategy for keeping your viewers engaged and connected to you? Do you use social media, a mailing list? What are your platforms? Yeah, so I mean, most of you guys are probably watching me on YouTube. You know, some of you guys are probably watching me on TikTok. Some of you guys are probably watching me on Instagram. I post everywhere. I actually prioritize marketing and having a social media presence equally to the amount of content that there is. And you might be wondering, Brandon, why would you value marketing the same amount as the actual content itself? And that's because I do believe that marketing can bring underrated projects to the next level. I think that there's a lot of really high quality projects out there that get swept under the rug. I think that there's a lot of mediocre projects that get pushed to the top. And when I look at the mediocre projects that get pushed to the top, what is the difference, right? It's marketing, right? And so I think if you have the marriage of quality and strong marketing, then you can have the ultimate banger, which to me, if I want to create a successful series, but also a long-lasting career, I think that I have to take marketing into my own hands. So how do I grow my audience? It's all social media right now. What's my strategies for keeping viewers engaged and connected to you? Creating educational content, answering your questions, talking to you guys whenever I can, creating stories that I hope will resonate with like the audience and connect with you guys. I mean, right now, I'm trying to connect by answering questions directly submitted by you guys. So there's that. I don't really use a mailing list. I wish I did, but you know, I've never kept up with a mailing list. It's sort of maybe too old school for me. But yeah, what are my platforms? I'm everywhere. Can you pinpoint a specific story or piece of art that made you say, yeah, I want to do this too? Yeah, I think Naruto, when I first read Naruto, really basic answer. I was like, yeah, dude, I wish I could create characters that are so cool like this, that are so compelling. I wish I could create like, you know, such a strong dynamic between two characters such as Naruto and Sasuke that can go across an entire series and be so memorable. I wish I could create like a power system that is just so flexible, and also, you know, thematically the world building is so strong that when you think about Naruto, you know, very different from a lot of the series that come out today, which are based, you know, on fantasy or some other thing. Like Naruto felt very unique, right? Similar to One Piece, right? And Dragon Ball. Like you can take one look at that world and you know that it's Naruto just from the art and the concept, right? And that was like one story that really stuck with me. My first novel, Age of Darkness, was entirely based off of my love for Naruto, right? Of course, I was 14 and I have many more inspirations now, but that was probably the first one. And that's kind of a basic answer. I wish I had a better answer for you, right? Everyone says Naruto, but that was the one. Please bring your manga to print. Yes, we're working on it. A lot of the webtoon stuff, that's out of my hands. You have to yell at Webtoon to print our stuff, but you know, I'm investing a lot in developing our own original manga series that, you know, will be working for print. Oh, this is a really good question. It seems manga is significantly harder to break into as a Westerner than Webtoon, as the Webtoon platform makes an effort to include non-Korean series, but most manga publishers do not do that. Where's the place that Westerners can get manga published for revenue? Manga Plus doesn't count. Yeah, so right now it's interesting because there's a huge gap in the market. Platforms, publishers, hopefully you're listening, you're right. I'm actually creating a bunch of pitches for companies because I think that there should be more manga companies that are entering the global market. Right now, the current manga landscape is that Japanese publishers are recruiting international creators, mostly artists, so not writers like me or producers like me, but they're recruiting artists not to work in the global market, but to go over to Japan and publish in Japan. It's for you know, I imagine it's for a lot of an increase in global storytelling as manga and anime start to become more global, so that they can get a larger diversity of stories, in addition to the current Japanese manga market that they're creating. So right now there's nothing really. When, you know, you might be asking, why did I go into Webtoon if I was starting off in manga? It's because of that accessibility. I think that the Korean Webtoon market is the most accessible for global creators right now to tell this type of story that you want to tell. So I think like that's a consideration, right? Is like, you know, like what accessible markets are there? If you want to tell your own story, you might, in the manga space, you either have to self-publish it yourself or you have to go to Japan. That's currently how it is. And there's different platforms. Like I'm partnered with Global Comics to do Apollyon. Global Comics is trying to be that platform, right? Where you can publish and sell your own stuff and do manga and distributes manga. So shout out to them because they're the homies. But Webtoon has also been a great partner for being able to distribute, again, the same type of story. And they're the biggest ones who are funding those types of stories. So if you're looking for actual investment, there's currently Webtoon's the only one that's funding in this space, right? And I wish there was more. So, you know, if any of the major Japanese companies, manga companies that are looking to invest, please hit us up. Isaac is an artist that I almost worked with at one point. But what is your favorite out of all your ongoing series and why? I can't say that, but you know, I would say Just a Goblin is a series that is the most fun. It has very deep themes for a series that has a very like cute and approachable art style, meaning like the Dragon Quest style, isekai, you know, Dragon Ball's art style, but inherently the theme of the story is about world peace, right? It's about solving world peace, and it's about segregation, it's about genocides, it's about political overthrow, you know, and we're able to mask it underneath this overall, you know, like really approachable art style, but also a very strong entertaining shonen story. So I think that one's a very interesting one because I can sort of do whatever I want because it's a fantasy world. Double Kill and Angel Wings are both series that are close to my heart. I feel like those are series that are just like very well produced. I think very holistic. I think that if they were produced as manga, they would also kill. If they were produced as anime one day, they would also kill. I might be talking out my ass, but I feel very confident about those two series and the quality that we've really put into those. So I'll pause there, but there's a lot of other bangers that are absolutely coming out over the next like year or so. 2026 is about to be crazy, so I'm really excited for the projects that we can share next. Let's go on to YouTube. How do you treat the initial brainstorming phase, and what's your first step to developing that idea? That's a great question. So when I'm developing stories for anime, manga, webtoon, first I you know, not everyone's the same, but I always start off with a log line. You know, I have this notes app where I put down random ideas, 1 to 2 sentences of what, you know, I think would be a good story concept. Just a Goblin, for example, would probably be like, a goblin becomes woke in a world where goblins are hunted by adventurers, right? And woke as in like, he understands that he's part of a video game, sort of, right? So that was probably the initial pitch, right? Then what do I do next, right? I think about the audience. I think about, is there an existing audience for this content? A lot of people will say like, oh, you have to create your own audience, all that stuff. For me, that's too much risk. If I'm gonna allocate like years of my life to doing a series, I care a lot about whether or not there's an existing audience for it and if there's proof of that concept already. So for me, for Just a Goblin, again, using as an example, in Webtoon, there's a lot of system stories. There's a lot of isekai stories. In fact, the original Just a Goblin story did not have a system in it. I added the system working with my friend JK's manga because I thought it would make it more marketable and align more to the audience of that platform. So I think a lot about that, and then I flesh out that concept later on. So I flesh out the concept when I'm looking to build a pitch, and I'll build like a paragraph pitch, logline, genre, synopsis, demographic, and see if I actually came up with something decent that brings something new to the market, or if I'm just regurgitating slop. And that happens all the time. Sometimes I put out slop and I'm like, all right, this is not going to be pitched, and you guys will never see that. Yeah, but in terms of brainstorming, like it's just like writing down notes mostly. How do I balance middle school life while writing a web novel? I've written 16 chapters. Chapter 17 hasn't come out since about 2 weeks ago. That's super hard. I remember when I was younger, right? My parents would shut off my internet. That's the reality of how I was, right? So I would have to do my homework before the internet shut off. And then in the evenings, I'm talking like 8 to 11 p.m. All I would do is write on my laptop because there's nothing else that I can do. There's no internet, there's no games. I have to figure out something to do if I finish my homework, right? And what I would do is I would write for 2 to 3 hours every single day. And not always, because I had after school programs and you got life. I didn't have an enormous amount of friends, but like, you know, in middle school during that time, I was mostly spending that sort of free time writing on my laptop with no internet, so you can't do anything except for write. I'm not saying that that's something you should do for yourself. I'm saying that it can be useful to remove all the distractions of the world and just lock in for 1 hour a day that you've blocked off. And that doesn't just apply for middle schoolers, that applies for every person ever. If you're in a full-time job, block off an hour, turn off your internet, lock in. I think that is a way to just slowly start to incrementally make progress on your story, right? A web novel writer at the highest level, most skilled web novel writers can write a chapter in probably like 1 to 2 hours, honestly. I remember some of my friends who are making like millions in the web novel space are doing chapters in 1 to 2 hours, honestly. I'm not saying that that's what you should be doing as a middle schooler, but I'm saying that, over the course of a week, you put in 5 hours into your chapter, 7 hours, maybe you'd have a finished chapter. Maybe you'd have multiple. And as you continue to ramp up, over the course of the year, you'll probably be able to get to that same level of like, I can do a chapter in 2 hours, right? For web novels in particular, right? For me, when I was younger and I was doing novels, I was doing traditional novels, not web novels, but I could probably do a chapter if I was in full flow within an hour as well. Of course, I would then go back and have to make edits, so you could probably bring it to a total of like 2 hours. But yeah, I think if you're in flow, like I was writing like 2 to 3 chapters, 40 pages of content in like a couple hours, right? Like not all good content. I was 14, right? Maybe even younger. But, I think putting in those reps every single day and blocking out that time is very, very useful. If you could do it for free, would you keep making anime, manga, webtoons? Guys, there's some projects where I spend my own money and I lose money. So not only would I do it for free, I would spend my own money, my own free money to make anime, manga, webtoon. In fact, before I did any of this, I was spending my time and I was spending my own money to do it. So would I do it? Of course. Before I went full time, I was literally burning my own savings to just make projects because that's what I love to do. Of course, my goal was to eventually hopefully make a return on that. But if I could never make $1 off of this, I probably would not be able to afford doing manga and webtoon anymore. Or anime projects for sure, I wouldn't be able to. I think I would shift over to novels, which I would only sacrifice my time. But would I still continue to create? 100%. 100%. All right, guys, last question. This is kind of an interesting question. As a beginner writer, mainly novels, what is a better route to gain an audience other than being a good writer? Should one start with a self-published full novel or start with sites like Tapas Web Novel where daily deadlines are needed to be met? Guys, I think at its core, daily deadlines for yourself, like I just said, very useful for just sitting down and being able to pump out content and get better at writing. You learned how to become a good writer by writing more. That's true across the board. Eventually, you're going to want to develop, if you're able to produce insane quantity, you're going to eventually want to shift over to creating quality. And the best writers are actually that ultimate marriage of quality and speed. So you could say George R. R. Martin, right, who does Game of Thrones, fantastic novels, right? You would argue many people are very upset with him that he's not able to keep up with his newest novels, right? If the ultimate version of him would be able to create novels at that quality with that speed, right? Of course, he's not able to do that, which is why currently, like, you know, we are where we are. My suggestion as a beginner writer, though, it depends on what you're looking for, right? Web novel has different contracts from Amazon. If you're self-publishing on Amazon, you retain the rights. If you go on web novel, you don't retain the rights. In fact, you can do a non-exclusive contract with them, I believe. And this is all not NDA stuff, right? I'm not signed with web novel, but they can do a non-exclusive contract with them. I think you can do an exclusive contract with them. The exclusive contract, they retain a lot of the rights that you have, which is like film, TV, all that stuff. And a lot of the companies will do that, right? So, you know, if they're giving you a better split, or they're marketing you, or they're giving you money, they act as your publisher. So I think it really depends on what you want to do. I think it depends on the type of story. The types of stories that will succeed on web novel are not always the ones that would succeed as traditional novel, right? For example, Game of Thrones would not do well as a web novel. It wouldn't, right? But would Solo Leveling do well as a web novel? It is a web novel that's popular, and that's why it does well. So you also have to create a concept that you can publish every single day, right? When I think about web novels, the top web novel creators are publishing 1 to 2 chapters a day, every single day. They press publish every day, which is crazy, right? It's objectively insane to be able to produce quality content at that speed, which is why some projects are just not quality. They're just pumping stuff out. But novels, right? You can spend a year, 2 years, and then put out like a finished product. And maybe it goes into the ether, you know? At least with web novels, you can tell as you're serializing if it's gonna hit or not. But I think that's sort of up to you, you know? If I were you, I would look at platforms that have existing authors that are doing exactly what you want to do. For example, if you pick a platform that does not have any popular authors or single-digit popular authors doing what you want to do, maybe be a little bit skeptical. Only because, like, what are the chances that you're going to be one of those guys? Or maybe the audience is just not there. It's not proven. Versus like, oh, I go to Amazon, I see like a bunch of novelists that are already popping off and there's just a lot of competition. Then yeah, it's okay to enter that mature market, right? Same with web novel. All right, it's a mature market. So these are all considerations that you should take when you're strategically thinking about like what platform to go to, but also thinking about what type of story will fit that platform. All right, guys, we're at 22 minutes. My editor is going to kill me. So guys, if you have any more questions, leave them in the comments. If you want more Q&A, guys, I don't know if I should keep doing these Q&As or if I should do more targeted educational content. I would love some feedback. Let me know in the comments and smash the like button. But for now, yeah, if you got this far, then let's do the word of the day. It's going to be Monkey King. Monkey King, comment Monkey King if you gotten this far. I'll catch you guys in next week's vid. Peace.